Welcome to Take Brainstalk with your girl Flavilla Phone Gang, and today I'm gonna fuel your brain with some bomb knowledge. Are you ready? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Tech Brainstalk. I am so happy to have you with me because today I have an amazing guest. But when all my guests are amazing, it's actually the co-founder of Shazam. If you're not familiar with Shazam, what have you been doing? Have you not been listening to some music? I try to think of a number of times in my life I use Shazam, which is one of my top applications because I'm always obsessed with music discovery. And today we're going to talk about the journey after Shazam with Dhiraj Mukherjee. So let me tell you something about Dhiraj. He's a co-founder obviously of Shazam, an experienced investor in tech for good startups. His research focus is Gen Z and the power of young entrepreneurs working to create a better society. In 2000, he founded Shazam Entertainment, the world's first mobile phone-based music recognition service, which was acquired by Apple in 2018 for, guess how much? 400 million. That's a pretty good score. He was named one of the Europe's top 50 technology entrepreneurs by the Financial Times in 2015. Great achievement. Previously, Dhiraj was head of banking innovation at Virgin Money, responsible for developing new digital services for students in the UK. He has also worked in media and entertainment, technology, and charity at Save the Children. Dhiraj has a degree in mathematical economics and an MBA from Stanford University's Graduate School of Business. Is a globally recognized keynote speaker in innovation, entrepreneurship, and emerging technology. I love that. Dhiraj, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Great to talk to you.
I'm so good. When I read your bio, I was like, this man has always been interesting in the younger generation because when you think about music, it's all your focus has always been about the next generation and what people can be because I think the young generation is the future, of course. And it's so good that you spend a lot of time focusing on that even now.
Yeah, this is the problem. It's obvious that I'm failing to grow up. So even though I'm 51, I'm clinging to my youth. But I'm trying to turn this into a virtue instead of a liability.
It's true because I say you are as long as you feel. People say that Flavilla, oh my gosh, you really? This is like I've always been super playful with my clients and everything I do in life. That's what keeps me happy, and I think it's super important. And obviously, everybody is very familiar with Shazam, which is probably one of the most popular app right now. But I think it's interesting in terms of, briefly, how did Shazam came about? People don't know the journey.
So back then I was young and foolish, and I was in my early 30s, and my good friend Chris Barton and I thought it'd be great fun to be entrepreneurs. It was the early days of the internet, and there was loads of people starting businesses in Silicon Valley where we lived at the time. So it seemed like a good idea. The only problem was that we didn't know what we wanted to do. So we used to sit around and brainstorm and drink beers and try to come up with ideas. And most of them, frankly, were terrible. And Chris actually came up with the idea for Shazam just because it really bothered him that he couldn't work out what music he was listening to. We used to hang out in cafes and bars, and he would ask me, and I'd have no idea either. So that wasn't helpful. So that's how he came up with the original idea for Shazam, which was to identify any music in any environment using a mobile phone. There were other problems as well. Didn't have the technology, we didn't have any music, we didn't have a business model, we didn't know how to reach the customers, but we thought those were just details we could work out. So we threw ourselves into the business and got started.
Love that. And obviously now you sold your business to Apple. When do you think it was time to let go and move on? When was that moment?
Well, the early part of the story was just trying to work out all these questions which we had and didn't have the answers to. And then we spent many years slowly and painfully growing the business. This is before smartphones launched. In 2007, when the iPhone launched, and in 2008, the App Store was really a game changer because Shazam then became an app as opposed to a number you had to dial from your old phone, and you got a text message with the name of the song and the artist, which was, so first generation mobile. And by about 2017, 2018, it was clear that there was a fantastic fit with what Apple were doing. They knew Shazam well, and it just seemed like the right time to exit the business. And I think all of us who are involved have been delighted with that. So even though that adventure is over, it feels like a happy ending to the story.
It is a great happy ending because at the end of the day, your app is still really, really well. I know that I use it all the time. I'm always Shazamming everything, which is a lot of fun. Any advice would you give to somebody thinking about, I would love, I always think that your app is successful if you're on the first page rollout on someone's phone. So anybody who has an app out there, what advice would you give them to become more successful?
The fact of the matter is that it's a long term game, and we started in the year 2000, and it took 15 years to get to be an overnight success, which was not the idea, But I think entrepreneurs today, my message would be the same, which is it's okay to be ahead of the game. It's okay to think towards the future and to be ambitious and to think big. But then you've got to really settle in and wait for the world to change, which tends to happen more slowly and more painfully than an ambitious entrepreneur would like. And that's the reality, the roller coaster of building a business and overcoming all the people who say it can't be done, we won't sign this month, and maybe we won't sign next year either. And there's no market and you'll never make money. So these are the trials and tribulations that sadly all entrepreneurs go through. But I think to have that resilience, to have that mental strength to take those setbacks, hopefully there'll be lots of happy endings for many other people starting their businesses today.
Fantastic. I think it's a great, great answer. So looking at now your focus, which is around tech for good startup. Why? Tell us why.
Well, I think that building a business is hard enough, but having impact at the same time is even harder. But I feel that we are entering a period now where it's not all about building a big business and making a load of money. And that's really sort of like passe. And part of my interest in young people is to draw inspiration from what are the things which matter to the next generation. And I see very clearly from people around me, as well as my own kids, that it's about, making a meaningful difference. And so in the old days, my generation, you got a job which paid well, fantastic. You got promoted, super. Nowadays, people want meaning as well as money. And it's the same thing, I think, as an investor. It's not about discovering the next Apple or Google, even though that would be fantastic, but to ask, if I'm investing my money, am I also making a positive impact? Am I also contributing something beyond just a financial return? And if the answer to that is yes, the companies which I'm investing in have their heart in the right place and are making a contribution towards, for instance, reducing the climate crisis, then that to me is a good thing. And very early days, and I'm still learning the ropes and feeling my way through this, but that's the mindset, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty, and I agree with you. I think it's the element of. I was recently giving a talk around integrating society issues in your brand culture, and I think it's so important that society issues are becoming. There's so many of them. First of all, whether it is Black Lives Matter, whether it is environmental issues, whether it is quality, diversity, all sort of things like that. It's important, and I think what I love the most about the younger generation, Gen Z or Generation Alpha, they are outspoken and they really understand as well the power of not being so much of a conformist and standing for what they believe. And I'm lucky that I work with some of them. They're talented, and if you give them a chance, I think sometimes you just need to give them a chance, and they will fuel and challenge you to think differently. I love how it is and how they think about their understanding of what companies they want to work for, or what companies they want to build, or what companies they want to spend their money on. It's a trillion market value in terms of the spending budget. It's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So I think young people today, that Generation Z, which is generally thought of as born in 1995 and later, they are entering the workforce now. They're the first generation which is working alongside what we think of as artificial intelligence, for instance, or augmented intelligence, as it's sometimes called. They are also customers. They are buying the products and services which they believe are in tune with their values. And they also, as you said, influencers. They have a dramatic impact on the perception of brands. So I think for both individuals as well as companies to understand how young people think and act and influence and how their lives will be shaped by the events we've seen in their lifetimes is really important. And that's why I enjoy my job, I guess. I enjoy trying to stay mentally young, even though physically I'm aged.
This is now took us up. You're great. You're great. I've seen you because the first time we made a private event, and I really like how you brought along. It was one young gentleman who was talking about, and he was so confident. And I think that it's so important to leave the door open for them to be around people like you, so they can also build their own confidence. But for any young individual right now listening, okay, I would love to start a business. What advice would you give them? First of all, around starting a business, tech for good startup. What advice would you give them? To go to like investors.
Sure. I think that when we started our business 20 years ago, it was quite a lonely game. And there wasn't the boom in entrepreneurship, which we've seen today, certainly in the UK, but in many parts of the world. So my advice would be to think of it as both a team game as well as a lot of support out there. So getting advice from other entrepreneurs. There's lots of resources out there now which support early stage founders. and particularly communities. So like-minded people. So it could be ethnic minorities and what challenges do they face as founders? It could be I invest in a lot of women founders. Are there specific issues which a woman CEO can discuss with her peers? And then within the impact space or tech for good, as I sort of call it, what are the specific challenges of finding the right investors, telling a story which is both about returns as well as impact, and sharing that knowledge and then contributing to that community. So that would be my advice, because no matter what, there's always going to be ups and downs. And when things are good, it's a good idea to share those. When things are not so good, being able to get the support of your peers, I find tremendously helpful.
I totally agree with you. I think it's so important, and always stay open, for people's suggestion and how they can help you. Again, don't be afraid to ask. I think that's super, super important. But when people think about tech for good, they necessarily don't think about money. But obviously, you have to be somehow commercial minded to make sure that you survive for as long as it is necessary to make an impact. So, what advice would you give? Because I think I've seen so many times people say, "Oh, I have a great idea," and I ask them like, "Where's the commercial focus to make sure that your business can last?" They're missing that. How come, and how do you think I can do better?
Yeah, the problem is that impact or doing good can be difficult to measure. And some people get hung up on this, and a lot of time and energy gets spent on measuring results. I don't have anything against that, but my own view is that a lot of desire comes from the heart, whether it's trust or love or passion. These are things which are difficult to measure. You just know when somebody is passionate about a topic. And in our case, our early investor, the chair of our board, called RJ, was passionate about music, which is why he loved Shazam, invested in it. So my advice is to tap into those points of passion when speaking with customers or investors or partners. Money, on the other hand, is very easy to measure, which is how much did you make? Did you make a profit? Is it growing? And cannot make that go away. So if you just say this is all about passion, I can't work out the money bit, but I'm sure it'll follow. That's not going to work. So it's trying to keep those two balls in the air at the same time and not making everything hard-headed quant and take the heart away, but not just blindly following one's passion without keeping in mind that one has to build an organization which can be sustainable, which can grow, which can scale, because impact at the end of the day is most meaningful when it's on a broad scale.
Thank you so much. I think it's been some amazing insights that people can really need to listen and re-listen to this again. Chris, in terms of the businesses that you've invested in, can you share some stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on the board of a company called MeVite, which is an Oxford neuroscientist and a computer scientist who build a system to help big companies avoid unconscious bias in their recruitment process. The average recruiter spends 6 or 7 seconds glancing at a CV and deciding whether to progress or not. And human beings, whether they like it or not, seek the familiar. So, whether it is a male candidate, whether they went to a recognized school, whether they have a degree which makes sense. However, there's lots of people who suffer through this process, and using machines to intelligently either mask information which can cause the bias or to pick out the candidates who human beings may not select. So I feel that has a hugely beneficial impact to less privileged candidates. So that's a good example. I've invested in a company called Beam, which helps homeless people. It's a crowdfunding platform so that individuals can support homeless people, and it's growing not just in the UK but around the world. Another company, Paul Jammer, which helps immigrants settle into their new environment, finding a job, finding a flat, things which some of us may take for granted, but which is very difficult. Again, kind of built on the principles of finding the right community and a helpful community. Another one which I'm passionate about is called Erase All Kittens, and it's started by a woman founder who's a creative designer. It's to help girls learn how to code. And technology tends to be male dominated and can be intimidating for girls. This allows girls to code while changing a game. So it uses entertainment as a method for learning about software skills. So it's a mix of things, but hopefully some of the themes emerge. It's about education. It's about helping less privileged parts of society. And I'm also very pleased to say that many of the founders that I've invested in come from either ethnic minority backgrounds. The women, they may have other less privileged starting points. And myself, as a male in technology, I feel that I came at it with a certain amount of privilege. So I like to give back if I can to others who may not have exactly the same privileges.
I love that. I think what comes across a lot is the fact that you really want to support the less privileged, and I think that's super key, and I love that. But people are listening to this and say, I would love to be more like Dhiraj.
Mhm.
How can they have the same approach in terms of business and also think about impact at the same time?
This is a question I've been thinking about, which is now I feel that investment has been democratized by platforms like Seedus or Crowdcube. So you can put £100 into a business which you believe in, or even a Kickstarter campaign. You can support projects which you believe in. And I don't see any reason why young people or people who are passionate about causes can't invest in companies that they feel are doing the right thing. I don't believe that the platforms are out there in great numbers, but I think that we'll see a growth in impact investing, broadly speaking, for the masses over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I'd love to be involved with that as it develops. So, what I would say is for anybody who wants to make sure that if they, let's say, putting money in their pension, that those investments are going to the right place, is to stay informed, to tune into where tech for good is traveling or where impact investment is traveling, and to make active decisions to say, I want to invest in renewable technology. I don't want to invest in extractive industries, or I want to invest in meat alternatives. So I think that just being switched on and watching this space will make a big difference. And I've read statistics which say that putting one's money to work can have a dramatically larger impact than, for instance, taking the bus instead of a car for a short journey. That makes a difference. But if you've got a pot of savings which is going towards supporting companies which are having impact at scale, that can have dramatically more of a difference. So I would encourage people to think about where they're putting their money, even if it's a small amount of
Yeah. I think what I realize more and more is that we all live in our own little bubble and we see things that we are already have interest for. And we need to have a natural desire to just be curious and stay curious and discover the world from the eyes of someone else. It's very interesting because for me, as a business, I've always been super impactful in terms of having a diverse team, recruiting young people to work with because I understand it's important because I didn't have that chance. It was harder for me being French and having a French accent and coming to London.
Mhm.
It was difficult when I started looking for a job. And then when I traveled around the world and, I went to different charities and I said, wow, I should start being more grateful for what I have.
Mhm.
So therefore, the brand DNA that I have, I've always had an interest towards that. And it's interesting that not all businesses have that because they start from a commercial point of view. But in the second part, we're going to talk more about that and if brands can all be tech for good. Be back in a couple of seconds.